Hey there. Thank you guys so much for stopping by my channel, The Magical Solution, here on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitch. So we are continuing forward with Allan Kardec's The Medium book, the second book in the series that we have been going through together. We went through the first book, which is the Spirits book. Great book. And of course, you can find all the previous reading recordings on my YouTube channel. And now we're on the second one. We are on chapter 20 of the second book. I also posted on my TikTok all of my PayPal, Venmo, and Cash App information. So PayPal is the magical solution at gmail.com. Venmo is at the magical solution, and Cash App, of course, is $ the magical solution. This is just to let you guys know that as much as I love volunteering my time for this kind of labor, it also really helps if you donate as well to just ensure that the content keeps on coming, right? So let's keep it going. So chapter 20 is entitled The Medium's Moral Influence. The subjects that will be covered in this chapter is various questions that, of course, Allan Kardec will be posing to the spirits, and they will be answering as best as they can. Hi, Joy. A spirit's dissertation concerning moral influence. So now, and then we're going to get the perspective of the actual spirit themselves and what they think moral influence is all about with regards to the medium themselves and with regards to the spirits, right? So let's get to it. So the first question is, does the development of mediumship have any relation to the medium's moral development? And the spirit answers, no. The faculty per se is organic and therefore independent of morality. However, the same does not apply concerning its use, which can be good or bad according to the medium's character. It has always been said that the mediumship is a gift from God, a grace, a divine favor. Then why isn't it a privilege of moral individuals only? And why are there unworthy persons who are endowed with it to the highest degree, but who use it badly? It's a great question, right? All of our faculties are favors for which we should thank God, for there are some persons who do not possess them. You could just as well ask, why has God given good eyesight to criminals, dexterity to thieves, or eloquence to those who only use it for evil? The same applies to mediumship. Unworthy individuals have been endowed with it because they need it more than others in order to better themselves. Do you think that God refuses the means of salvation to the guilty? Instead, he multiplies such means at every step by placing them right in their hands. It is their responsibility to take advantage of them, however. Didn't the traitor Judas perform wonders and cure diseases as a disciple? God provided him with this gift so that he might afterwards see more clearly the arduous of his betrayal. Question number 3. Will mediums who put their faculties to bad use, who do not utilize them for good, or who do not take advantage of them for their own education suffer the consequences? If they put them to bad use, they will be doubly punished since they will have lost the opportunity to profit from a way of enlightening themselves. A person who sees clearly and stumbles anyway is more culpable than someone who is blind and falls into a ditch. Question number 4. There are mediums who quite often receive spontaneous communications that are about the same subject, addressing certain moral questions. For example, related to certain defects. Is there some purpose for this? Yes. And the purpose is to enlighten them concerning a constantly repeated subject or to correct them of certain defects. This is why spirits always speak to some about pride and others about charity, for only persistence will finally succeed in opening their eyes. There are no mediums who misuse their ability out of ambition or self interest, or who disgrace it with some essential defect such as selfishness, pride, or frivolousness, who do not time and again receive warnings from spirits. Most of the time, unfortunately, they do not apply such warnings to themselves. Spirits nearly always give their lessons in a reserved, indirect way in order to allow for greater merit to those who know how to apply and take advantage of them. However, some persons are so blind, so proud, that they do not recognize themselves in the picture that they have right in front of them. And furthermore, if a spirit gives them to understand that they themselves are the subject of the lesson, they become angry and call the spirit a liar or a joker, enough to prove that the spirit is correct. Question number 5. Why then do we receive general lenses with no personal application? Like, don't mediums act as passive instruments to serve for the instruction of others? Almost always such warnings and advice are not directed toward them, but to others whom we can only reach through their mediumship. Nonetheless, mediums should try to profit from them themselves unless they are blinded with vanity. Don't think that mediumship is given only to the correct one or two individuals. Rather, the objective is greater. It is meant for all humankind. As individuals, mediums are very unimportant instruments. Thus, when we provide instructions of general interest, we utilize mediums who offer us the required abilities. But you can be very sure that the time will come when good mediums will be quite common and good spirits will no longer have to use the faculty of instruments. Question number 6. If a medium's moral qualities repel less evolved spirits, why do mediums gifted with good qualities transmit erroneous or even crass responses? Do you know all the secrets of their soul? Besides, without being nasty, they can be irresponsible and frivolous instead, and they could also be in need of a lesson in order to warn them. Question number 7. Why do highly evolved spirits allow persons who are gifted with great mediumship abilities and who could do a great deal of good to become instruments of error? Well, such spirits try to influence them, but when these individuals allow themselves to be drawn onto the path of error, they do not stop them. That is why they use them so reluctantly, for the truth cannot be interpreted with a lie. Question number 8. Is it completely impossible to receive good communications through an imperfect medium? Imperfect mediums can sometimes obtain good communication since, if they have good faculty, good spirits can use them in the absence of better ones in special circumstances. They do so only temporarily, however, because when they find others who would serve them better, they would prefer them. So this goes back to what we were talking about a couple chapters back about how the higher moral mediums or the higher intellectual mediums or the mediums with the more developed faculties um, tend to attract higher vibrational entities and better entities in terms of um, the hierarchy of spirits, right? But that doesn't mean that good spirits won't visit lower moral mediums or mediums that don't have their faculties up to par. It's just they would prefer not to, right? We should point out that when good spirits see certain mediums cease to be good instruments and due to their imperfections start to become prey to deceptive spirits, they nearly always bring about circumstances that reveal their deficits and they keep them away from serious, well intentioned persons whose good faith might be abused by them. In such cases, whatever their faculties may be, there is nothing to be sorry about. Okay? What are the qualities of mediums whom we could regard as perfect? Perfect? Alas, you know very well that there is no perfection on the face of the earth. If such were not so, you would not be there. Thus, we say good mediums instead of that is saying much, for they are rare indeed. Perfect mediums would be those whom evil spirits would never dare to try to deceive. However, the best ones are those who are attuned solely to good spirits and who allow themselves to be deceived the least. So this may be a reason as to why so many quote unquote evidential mediums claim that there's no such thing as evil spirits or bad spirits because they have trained to put themselves on an elevated level so that they only attract good spirits. But here's the thing. Sorry, you guys, my throat is so dry. I have nothing to drink. But here's the thing. Those particular mediums, unless they keep up that moral facade, which honestly it really is when you think about it, because we're human. We fuck up, nobody's perfect, right? So unless they keep up that moral facade forever, the idea of thinking that you'll never encounter a harmful or deceitful spirit is Looney Tunes. Looney Tunes. Okay. Question number 9. What are the qualities of mediums whom we could regard? Oh, sorry, that was the previous question. Sorry. Question number 10. If they are attuned solely to good spirits, why do these spirits allow them to be deceived? Good spirits allow the best mediums to be deceived sometimes so that they can exercise their judgment and learn to discern truth from falsehood. Besides, no matter how good mediums may be, they are never perfect. That they do not have a weak side that can expose them to being attacked. Such should serve them as a lesson. The erroneous communications that they receive from time to time are warnings for them to avoid deeming themselves infallible and becoming proud. Because mediums who receive the most noteworthy communications cannot be any more proud of themselves than an organ grinder who only has to turn the crank in order to produce beautiful tunes. All right. So that's not saying that he's sending, that's not, the spirits are not saying that they're purposefully sending, you know, deceitful spirits to mediums. They're simply saying that, they kind of stand back a little bit and allow these good mediums to be tested in a way, to kind of keep them on their toes and to expose them to their own fallacies, to sort of shine a mirror onto the fact that there are flaws that they have that they need to be aware of so that they don't allow those flaws to be their downfall. It's an opportunity to change something, it's an opportunity to see something, it's an opportunity to get better and to go deeper and to evolve. So again, it's not about, harming mediums. It's about showing them themselves, right? Question 11. What conditions are necessary so that the word of highly evolved spirits comes to us without any alteration? Desire only what is good and avoid selfishness and pride. Both conditions are necessary. Question 12. If the word of higher order spirits cannot come to us in its purest form except under such difficult conditions, isn't it an obstacle to spreading the truth? No, the light always comes to those who desire to receive it. Those who desire enlightenment must run from darkness, and darkness is to be found in the impurity of the heart. Spirits whom you consider as personifications of morality do not willingly answer those who have a heart stained with pride, greed, and lack of charity. Therefore, let those who desire enlightenment free themselves from all human vanity and humble their reason before the infinite power of the Creator. This will be the best proof of their sincerity. All are able to fulfill this condition. And I'm glad the spirit kind of said this because it's, in a way it's true. Like he's talking about the human condition. He's talking about sorry, this thing just keeps moving. Let me just try and fix this. I apologize. Um he's talking about the human condition in which um we all have the potentiality. We all have the potential to serve our highest good and our highest self and to step into that power. And we do that not by running away from darkness in the literal sense. Like, he's not talking about it in terms of like, oh, just close your eyes and pretend it's not there. He means like, understand that it's there, understand that these tests will always be around, understand that imperfection is part of the human condition, but instead simply strive to be good, strive for enlightenment, strive to have compassion and be of service to your community and to humankind and just remain humble. And if you do that, it's like you walk this untouchable path in a way. um, but as you walk this untouchable path, it's important not to be overcome by pride and selfishness, thinking and ego, thinking that you're better than others, thinking, okay, I have these special gifts and I know only good and therefore I am X, Y, and Z. Because then that's how these deceitful spirits kind of find these back doorways and start finding these little cracks in your space that they can then slip in and try and test you. And in those times, your spirits are going to step back and allow that to happen, to see how you handle that, to see if your sincerity towards God and your integrity towards self and your charity towards others still remains present even in the face of these mirrors that are shining back at you that show you all of the cracked pieces of yourself. That's really, really important as an espiritista, as a medium, just as a human being. When you're doing that inner work, it's just so important to constantly stay humble and look at yourself in the mirror and say, where is it now that I need to focus? So even though mediums are merely instruments with regards to execution, they nevertheless exert a large moral influence because communicating spirits identify with the medium's spirit. And for this identification, there must be sympathy between them. We might even say an affinity. The soul exerts a kind of attraction or repulsion upon the communicating spirit according to the degree of similarity or dissimilarity between them. Pay close attention to that sentence, you guys. Thus, good souls have affinity with good spirits, and bad souls have an affinity with bad spirits. From which it follows that the moral qualities of mediums have a capital influence upon the nature of the spirits who communicate through their intermediation. If mediums are morally lacking, then less evolved spirits huddle around them and are always ready to take the place of good spirits. The mediums try to contact. The qualities that attract the preference of good spirits are goodness, benevolence, simplicity of heart, love for one's neighbor, and detachment from material things. The defects that repel them are pride, selfishness, envy, jealousy, hate, greed, sensuality, and all the passions that keep humans attached to matter. Now, please keep in mind, once again, this was written from the perspective of sort of like very enlightened Christians. It's a very, very Christian influence sort of idea. So there's a lot of purity culture in this. Sins of the flesh and like absolving and all these like concepts that you normally associate with Christian ideas are very heavily put in here. But I need you to understand that they're definitely much more metaphorical than they are literal. They're not asking you to become a nun and never have sex again. They're not asking you to never get angry, or have a moment where you want to fight someone, because those are natural things, and there's a time and place for all of these feelings. Okay, and these feelings have helped us to survive all this time. But what they are saying is that you are what you attract. Okay. And if you notice that the spirits around you are spirits that are harmful and deceitful and cause you depression and anxiety and angst and all these feelings, then there's something inside of you that's magnetizing to them. It's calling to them. And this is where you have to do your own work. Okay. All moral imperfections are open doors for evil spirits. But the one they most easily exploit is pride, because pride is the one that people least often confess about themselves. Pride has led to the loss of many mediums gifted with the most beautiful faculties, and who, without pride, would have been remarkable and highly useful instruments. As they become prey to the deceiving spirits, their faculties were at first twisted and then destroyed, and many saw themselves humiliated by the bitterest of disappointments. Pride expresses itself in mediums through unmistakable signs that must be brought to light, for it is one of the elements that must arouse distrust concerning the veracity of their communications. It starts with a blind confidence in the superiority of the communications and the infallibility of the spirit who transmit them. This causes a certain disdain for everything that does not proceed from only them, once they deem themselves privileged with truth. The prestige of the great names with which spirits who say that they are their protectors adorn themselves, dazzle them, and since their vanity would suffer if they were to confess that they had been duped, they reject every type of counsel and even avoid it altogether, shunning friends and anyone else who might possibly be able to open their eyes. Even if they were to agree to listen to such persons, they would not assign any importance to their warnings, for to doubt the superiority of their guiding spirit would almost be blasphemy. They are upset by the least disagreement, by the slightest critical observation, and they sometimes end up by even hating the persons who have tried to be of help to them. And due to the isolation caused by the spirits who do not wish to be contradicted, these same spirits do everything that they can to entertain these mediums' delusions by leading them to naively regard the most absurd matters as being sublime. And therefore, blind trust in the superiority of the communications they receive, disdain for those that do not come through their intermediation, unreflective regard for the grand names, rejection of counsel, distrust of any criticism, avoidance of those who can provide disinterested opinions and confidence in their own skill despite their lack of experience. These are the characteristics of proud mediums. We must remember that pride is almost always aroused in mediums by those who surround them. If they are endowed with slightly transcendental abilities, they are sought out and praised, and they end up deeming themselves to be indispensable. Soon they put on airs of importance and disdain when they lend their services. We have more than once lamented the praise heaped on some mediums with the intention of encouraging them. Right? I think we've all seen a couple of those. I mean, just go on the internet. Just go on TikTok, go on Facebook, go Go on Instagram, go anywhere where there are psychic mediums, and you will definitely find your handful of those who are just so happy with themselves and their gifts and truly, go through an absolute meltdown um, if they are contradicted or if they're challenged in any kind of way. They tend to surround themselves with sort of like a cult like slash hive mind group of people who will then come to their defense. Um, I mean, a lot of the times these mediums who are so filled with pride never even have to argue their own arguments because they have so many people that they've sort of brainwashed with their gifts to do the fighting for them. So it's really, really difficult. Usually, the only time you see mediums like this really ever get humbled is when they get severely, severely publicly embarrassed and humiliated. They do something crazy, or they come out of character, or one of these deceitful spirits ends up kind of speaking through them in a public arena, and it just ruins everything, and is usually the downfall of them. Stay humble, my friends, right? On the other side of the coin, let us emphasize the picture of mediums who are truly moral, in whom we can trust completely. First, let us suppose an ease of performance sufficiently great to enable spirits to communicate freely without the burden of any material difficulty. Having done so, the most important thing to consider is the nature of the spirits who customarily assist them. And for this, we must pay more attention to their language than the names that they assume. They must never forget that the affinity gained among good spirits will always be in proportion to the efforts that they make to repel the evil ones. Convinced that their ability is a gift that has been granted for good purposes, they will never take advantage of it or attribute any merit to themselves for possessing it. They accept the good communications received as a blessing, and they should put forth every effort to render themselves worthy of them through goodness, benevolence, and modesty. The former group of mediums pride themselves in their relations with so called superior spirits, and the latter humble themselves by always regarding themselves as unworthy of such favor. I am the type of medium that kind of falls in between, right? Um, I do not believe that to be a good moral medium, you have to think of yourself as unworthy. I don't think that that is a healthy perspective, and that is where I disagree with him. Don't get me wrong, Allan Kardec is considered the father of modern day spiritism, but my man has some issues. He's got some stuff in here that's really just doesn't vibe with 2022, right? And this is one of them. You can have confidence in yourself. You can be proud of yourself. You can um, offer your services in exchange for goods and money. You can do that and still be a morally good person and still offer and volunteer your time for charity and compassion for your community. There's room for it, right? Now, where there's no room for is for you to then use that platform to harm other people, take advantage of other people, lie, and be, and lose your integrity. You know what I mean? We are now on the spirit's dissertation concerning moral influence. So these next couple of pages are basically what the spirit has to say about all of this. So up to this point, it was a question and answer situation. So now we're just going to hear what the spirit thinks. Okay. The following instruction on the subject was given to us by a spirit whose many communications we have already reproduced. Here we go. As I have already said, mediums in and of themselves exert a secondary influence in spirit communications. Their role is like that of an eclectic telegraph machine transmitting dispatches between two distant places on the earth. Thus, when we want to dictate a message, we act upon the medium like a telegraph operator acts upon the apparatus, i.e., in the same way that the tic-tac of the telegraph will trace the reproduced signals of the dispatch upon a strip of paper thousands of miles away. We also communicate what we want to teach you across the immeasurable distances that separate the visible and the invisible worlds, the immaterial and incarnate worlds, by means of mediumistic apparatuses. However, just as an atmospheric conditions often act upon and disturb telegraphic transmissions, the medium's moral influence sometimes acts upon and disturbs the transmission of our dispatches from beyond the grave. For we are then obliged to send them through an environment which opposes them. Most of the time, though, the influence is nevertheless nullified by our energy and will, and no disturbance occurs. As a matter of fact, dictations of elevated philosophical reach and communications of perfect morality are sometimes transmitted through mediums who seem hardly appropriate for such superior instructions, whereas, on the other hand, communications that are hardly edifying sometimes arrive through mediums who are ashamed of having to have served to transmit them. We may affirm, as a general rule, that similar spirits attract each other and that groups of highly evolved spirits rarely communicate through bad conductors when they have good mediumistic apparatuses at their disposal. In other words, good mediums. Frivolous, little serious mediums therefore summon spirits of the same nature, and that is why their communications are characterized as banality, frivolousness, truncated ideas, and are nearly always very heterodoxical, spiritually speaking. Of course, they can sometimes say good things, but it is precisely in such cases that one must submit them to a severe and scrupulous examination, because in the midst of good things, certain hypocritical spirits skillfully and calculatedly insinuate imagined facts and lying assertions for the purpose of deceiving good faith listeners. Every equivocal word and sentence must then be eliminated without mercy, retaining only what logic approves or what the doctrine has already taught. Communications of this nature only threaten isolated spiritists and recently formed or unenlightened groups, because in meetings of more advanced and experienced adherents, it is futile for the crew to adorn itself with peacock feathers, since it will always be mercilessly exposed. Now, I will not speak of mediums who enjoy soliciting and receiving obscene communications. Leave them to take pleasure in the fellowship of their cynical spirits. Besides, communication of this type requires solitude and isolation. In any case, they could never provoke anything but disdain and repugnance among members of philosophical and serious groups. However, where mediums' moral influence truly makes itself felt is when they substitute their own personal ideas for those that spirits attempt to suggest through them. And it is felt even more when they draw delusional theories from their own imagination, which they naively deem to have resulted from an intuitive communication. In this case, there are thousand chances to one that it represented nothing more than a reflection of their own personal spirit. A curious occurrence is when the medium's hand sometimes moves mechanically under the impulsion of a secondary or mocking spirit. This is the touchstone against which ardent imaginations fall, because led by the ardor of their own ideas, by the artifice of their literacy knowledge, these mediums despise the modest dictation of a wise spirit, and forsaking the prey to hunt the shadow, they replace it with puffed up paraphrase. Boom! Boom. So what the spirit is saying here, I'm not finished, but what the spirit is basically saying here is One of the worst types of pride, one of the worst types of moral infallibility within mediums is thinking that they can interpret, that they know better than the spirit. Okay. So basically, when a spirit is trying to give a message, it is important for the medium to stay humble and give the message exactly as it is given to them. Because trying to change it or interpret it through their own lens and through their own stuff is going to mumble up the message. And what the spirit is saying here is that you're going to end up giving the person a paraphrase versus an accurate message. And a lot of times that paraphrase is completely, just shrouded in your own egoistic assumptions and your own conspiracy theories and your own ideas about what philosophy and spirituality is all about. And the spirit is not here for that. The spirit ain't got the time for that. You know what I mean? Another pitfall that these ambitious personalities fall prey to is when, in the absence of the communications that good spirits refuse them, they present their own works as having come from them. Thus, it is necessary that the leaders of groups be gifted with refined tact and rare se- sagacity, yes, in order to discern authentic communications from those who are not, and at the same time, not harm those mediums who have allowed themselves to be deluded. Child, this is usually the ones that you see, the mediums that write books and say, "Oh, I've channeled this from spirit." But, like, there was no one there to witness it, it wasn't written by a third party, it was just them just writing stuff down and claiming that it came from spirit, and the messages are hypocritical, they don't match up, they don't make sense, like, it becomes, it doesn't follow logic. That's usually how you know. When in doubt, abstain, states one of your ancient proverbs. Thus, accept only what is backed by indisputable evidence. Whenever a new opinion appears that seems the least bit doubtful, pass it through the sieve of reason and logic. Whatever reason and common sense approve, fearlessly reject it. It is better to reject 10 truths than to accept one single lie. In fact, upon that one erroneous theory, you could build an entire system which would crumble under the first breath of truth like a monument constructed on quicksand. Whereas if you reject certain truths today because they are not clear or logical to you, a shocking fact or an irrefutable demonstration will soon come to you to affirm their authenticity. Nonetheless, O spiritists, remember that nothing is impossible for God and for good spirits except injustice and inequality. Spiritism has already spread extensively among humankind and has already sufficiently moralized the sincere followers of its doctrine, so that the spirits no longer feel obligated to utilize bad instruments or imperfect mediums. Now, if mediums, however they may be, become the object of suspicion due to their conduct, their habits, their pride, or their lack of love and charity, reject their communications, there is a serpent hiding in the grass. Thus is my conclusion concerning the moral influence of mediums. Love it. What time is it? 8:39. Perfect timing. So we are stopping at 8:40, right? And so now is the opportunity to ask your questions about what we just read or just in general, any questions about, learning mediumship and learning this concept of spiritism and learning, espiritismo and all that stuff. Now's a good time to answer those questions. In the meantime, while you're thinking of your questions, keep in mind that next time we get together, we'll be reading chapter 21, and it'll be the chapter on the influence of the surroundings, right? So this is what is around the medium at the time that they're doing their mediumship, and does it have any influence on their work? And of course, mediumship in animals. We'll be getting into that as well the next time we get together. So it should be a good day the next time. So how are we doing? Oh, thank you. Yes, the book it's a great book. And when I finish with this one, we will go to another medium, another huge influencer in the spiritism community. He's a man from Brazil, Chico, and his books are amazing as well. So we'll be starting his collection once we are finished with this one. I had a dream. My grandmother told me not to talk to them, and they were dark shadows, deceased spirits. She herself is deceased now. I'm scared to communicate at all. Any suggestions? Let me just read that again. hmm So, was she referring to herself and some other spirits that she was with, or was she referring to a set of spirits that you were encountering and she was trying to warn you about them? Because it sounds like the latter. And I always say grandma knows best. So just listen to grandmama, right? But there might be more to the story that we just don't know about, right? In the meantime, those of you on TikTok, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, again, as much as I love to volunteer my time, please feel free to donate to my PayPal, Venmo, or Cash App so that this kind of content can keep coming. You can find all of my contact info at the Magical Solution, right? Including my email at gmail.com. And, drop some love, drop some financial love to help me out with content, right? Renee, did you get my question? Are you able to clarify that? Who's in here now? Hello. Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Then I would definitely listen. I would definitely listen to her, you know. And it could just be also too, let's not forget that when we talked about spirits in the spirits book, the first book that we read, they talked about how number one, it's not so much that these dark shadows are evil, you know? There are such things as very lower vibrational energies, demonic energies, of course. But there are times when spirits of the dead appear as shadowy figures because they themselves are not in an elevated state. They themselves might be in a transient state that isn't of the highest, right? And so in a sense they're also suffering too. So when they appear to us, they appear dark, shadowy, sometimes a little scary, um, and their energy is a little bit uncomfortable. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they intend you harm. It is important though that when those kinds of energy do enter your space, that you yourself are able to protect your own energy and be able to discern, like to separate energies, because spirit kind of works through each other, right? Like we're all spiritual things and we all kind of like leak into each other and we leave residue upon each other and all that stuff. So it's important that if they come into or if you want to come into contact with them to find out what their story is and to figure out what to do with them, you need to have your own protections up. You need to have your own situation stable first, because you don't know what kind of energies they're carrying with them. There could be the energy of depression, could be spirits of suicide, could be spirits of anger and violence, could be spirit. I mean, you never know, and that's why they're appearing the way that they appear. So, um, so if grandma says don't talk to them, stay away, that's probably her way of saying you may not be ready yet to deal with this kind of stuff. So just don't engage them yet until you've gotten the skills to be able to either send them away or assist them in their evolution or whatever your role is at that time, right? So hopefully that was helpful. Hi Christine, I'm not doing readings today, honey. I'm reading from a book. That's all I did. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Um, I'm going to try again either Tuesday or Thursday of next week to continue on. So make sure you check in. It'll be around either 7 or 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And, make sure you find your own copies or at least go to my YouTube to catch up on all the previous chapters. That's the Magical Solution with a CK. And I hope to see you next time. This is how we grow, you guys. Have a good night.